everyone, what's up? My name is Joss and welcome back to my channel squibblesreads. Today I'm going to be doing the 6th video in my Thrillers and More Thursday series, which is a series where I talk about books in the crime, mystery, and thriller genres. It has been a hot minute since I have done one of these videos. I feel like I say that every single time. So today I'm going to be reviewing 3 books for you guys. I'm also going to be telling you about 2 that I sadly DNF'd over winter break, and I will also be telling you about 2 of the mystery type books that I'm reading right now. I always have like 4 or 5 books on the go, and 1 or more of those is always a mystery. So yeah, let's get started. So the first book that I finished is Where They Found Her by Kimberly McCreight. This book, Where They Found Her, is actually one of the 2 books that was my BookTube recommends TBR pick of the month of January. This book was recommended to me by Lala over at Books and Lala. Basically, this book is written in 3 points of view. The overarching plot line is that it starts with the body of a baby that was unfortunately found in the wooded area that's close to a prestigious college campus in New Jersey. There is a journalist whose name is Molly, and she is unexpectedly asked to go and investigate this death. But Molly is really affected by this because in her personal life, she lost her own baby and she experienced some really bad depression after that. There is also a woman whose name is Sandy who is looking for her mother, as well as another lady whose name is Barbara, and she is the head of like the parent-teacher association thing at her school, and she has her youngest son is in elementary school, and he has been having some very disturbing thoughts and some very disturbing speech and images that he like presents to his friends and his parents and stuff. So those are the 3 women whose points of view that this book alternates between. I remember that my first thought about this book was that there were a lot of people to handle. And by a lot of people, I mean like a lot of characters. So there are these 3 women, their kids or their partners or their colleagues, just a lot of people in the situation. And every time a point of view switches, I found that in like the first quarter of the book, there was always a new person introduced. So it was really hard for me to keep them separated. So I thought that it would be a little bit hard to handle, but if it was handled well, it could have been really, really great, and just like this tangled web that's been woven. Was it really great? I don't know. I think it was okay. I think that there was not much to distinguish each woman's voice from one another. I think they all sounded very similar. And by similar, I feel like the author wrote the plot first when she was writing the book and kind of just like made up names and made up figures to insert where she thought a character needed to be. It was very plot focused. There wasn't a lot of room for developing each of these characters because there were so many of them. Like, I honestly can't even tell you what these women looked like or what I thought they looked like. I just don't think that there was much description going on, so it was really hard for me to picture these people in my head. Going to the book, Lala did tell me that I would have to suspend disbelief in order to fully enjoy the book, and that's not something that I really took into account when I was rating the book, because that's not something that I go into thrillers looking for, is like a believable journey. But if you do want to read this, that is something that I would also suggest, is that you suspend disbelief. Overall, I think it could have been better, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. So one of the 2 books that I DNF'd was actually on my most anticipated releases of 2017 video, and that just like breaks my heart because I was really, really looking forward to this one. I think out of all of them, this one sounded the most up my alley. This book is called Dead Gone by Luca Vesti, and it was released in January. There is a female student's body that shows up. It turns out that on the body there is a note that describes that her death was the result of an unethical psychology experiment that was performed. And over time, more of these bodies with these notes keep showing up, and the investigation starts from there. So this sounded so promising. It started out with this passage from a psychology textbook about the meaning of death and how to ascribe meaning to a person's life. But then the book started and it all kind of just went downhill from there. One thing that I noticed was that they were describing the setting, and it was literally just kind of like a verbal map of the place. So like to the east there was a river, and then if you turned left there was a playground, and then there was like a cobblestone path and a brick wall, and that's perfectly fine, but there was like a whole page of this stuff, and I was just like, this is just, I just felt that like the writing was just a little bit lazy. Something else that really bugged me was that there were so many sentences in a row that started with the word she, and it kind of reminded me of when I was in grade school and our teacher would tell us to not start all of our sentences with I because it just sounded so repetitive. That's what happened in this book, because there were so many sentences in a row that started with the word she. Also, this book is written in third person, and when they were describing some people, they would definitely describe the slender people as being more attractive. And when they would describe heavier people, the narrator, this third person narrator, would be derogatory about how they looked or how much they weighed or how large they were. It just gave me kind of an ooky feeling inside, so I did end up DNFing this book at 20%. Another book that I finished over winter break was The Conjoined by Jen Sukfong Lee. I think this is billed as like a thriller, but it's also very, very character driven. There is a lot of character and backstory development. The book opens in the present with a woman named Jessica. She is a social worker, and her mom unfortunately has just passed away, so she is going through a bunch of her mom's things, and when she goes down to the basement, she opens the freezer and she discovers that there are two girls' bodies that have been in the freezer. So then we flash back to the past, and she remembers two foster children that her mom took in. It was the year 1988, and they live in the Vancouver area in British Columbia in Canada. These sisters were from a Chinese immigrant family, and 6 weeks after Jessica's mom took them in, they went missing, and the police just kind of closed the case and assumed that they were runaways. The book goes through what Jessica experienced with the girls and her mom, and the mystery of what happened with the girls and whether Jessica or her mom was involved in the disappearance of the girls. So in some ways, Jessica is kind of like an unreliable narrator. So I really liked this book. It dealt with a lot of issues like foster care and poverty and immigration, but it also manages to hold that suspense of the mystery and what happened to the girls. The mood was really dark and somber, and it seemed like it was raining for a lot of the book, even though I don't think it actually was. If you've ever heard anything about Vancouver, the stereotype is that it's always raining. If you actually go to Vancouver, it doesn't rain quite as much as people think, but that's totally off topic, and I think that the mood in this book is kind of like dreary, rainy, somber type of mood, and I think that totally was appropriate for what they were talking about. I loved the writing. I think it was just lyrical enough to make it nuanced and really stand out, but it was also fast-paced enough to keep the mystery going. It is a little bit slower paced than other thrillers, I will say, but it was just enough to kind of keep those details in place. I will warn you now, if you are not a fan of uncertainty, I'm not sure that you will fully be able to enjoy this book, because there are some elements that are left uncertain. I won't say what they were, and I won't go into that at all, but I personally liked it because there are a lot of things in life that just have a bunch of loose ends, and sometimes they're just like that, and we have to deal with that type of loss. So just know that going into this book. I adored it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, I'm also going to talk about the second book that I DNF'd, and this book was on my January TBR, and it's called Her Every Fear by Peter Swanson. This is about a girl named Kate. She's an art student. She lives in London, and her ex-boyfriend kidnapped her and tried to kill her. So now she has just a whole bunch of awful anxiety attacks. She was contacted by her distant cousin Corbin, who lives in Boston. They haven't really ever talked a lot, but he volunteers to switch homes with her, so he would go to London and she would go to Boston. She takes him up on that offer, and she ends up in Boston. And when she gets there, she finds out that Corbin's neighbor Audrey has gone missing, and then she meets a dude who's totally convinced that Corbin is the one who is responsible for or is involved in Audrey's disappearance. Honestly, I don't think I have a particular reason for DNFing this. I think that it just didn't really stand out a ton. The characters just weren't being developed in the way that I wanted them to be. The writing was very simple. It didn't stand out, and I think honestly that if I started this book at a different time, I would have probably kept going and maybe not totally rated it 5 stars, but I would have finished it. But just at this time, I was looking for something that was really gripping and that I would really love, so I didn't end up DNFing this. So the next book that I finished is called Everything You Want Me to Be by Mindy Mejia. This book came out in January. It's about a girl named Hattie who is a high schooler. She was found stabbed to death one day, and it is written in 3 people's points of view, so Hattie in the past, and also Peter, who is an English teacher at Hattie's school, and the leading sheriff who is in charge of this case, and his name is Dell. In terms of the relationships between the people, I'm sure that it's not really that hard to guess what the relationship between these people were, but I do think that the way that it was executed was super organic, it was super raw, and just really deep and awful and disturbing to read. I think this is a good example of when a trope that's used a lot is done well. I mean, it is nothing that I haven't seen before, but I did think that it was done really well. I thought that the character of Hattie and the emotions that she was feeling were really fleshed out and really in depth. I don't have a ton to say about this apart from that. I did think that the three voices were very distinct. I could definitely tell the difference between all three of them. But I also think that if another book with a more original premise with the same amount of execution came out, I'd probably rate that one higher than this one. But something about this was just so gripping and just really, really deep, and I really liked that. Originally, I did give this book 3 stars. I think I will bump it up to 3.5 because this is the type of book that will just pop up in my head randomly, and that is a really good indicator of me bumping up the rating after I initially write it. Okay, so very quickly going through the books that I am currently reading. The first one is called Kay's Lucky Coin Variety. This is by Anne Y.K. Choi. It is set in Toronto in Canada in the 1980s, and our main character is a girl named Mary. She is the child of, her parents are immigrants from Korea, and they own a convenience store called Kay's Lucky Coin Variety, and it is in a part of the neighborhood where it is not very well off. The book opens with one of Mary's old classmates who comes into the store, and it actually turns out that she has become a sex worker on the block where Mary's parents' convenience store is. Mary recognizes her because of this very distinct scar that she saw on this girl's hand in elementary school. This is apparently partially a coming of age novel, and apparently later on in the book there's some violence and deceit and secrets that come to light. There is also some commentary about the immigration experience. Right now, I am about 15% of the way through, and those secrets haven't really come to the surface yet, but I'm sure they will soon. Okay, and the last book that I'm going to talk about is actually my second BookTube Recommends TBR jar pick for the month of January. I haven't quite finished it yet. Actually, I've only just gotten started with it. But this is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I'm sure you've heard of this book. It's been around BookTube a whole bunch. This is about a group of 4 students at a prestigious university, and a murder takes place. And this was the book that Kristen from Vienna Waits Books recommended to me for January. That's it for this video. It has been a hot minute since I've made a Thrillers and More Thursday, so I'm really happy that I did. Please let me know if you've read any of these books, or if any of them sound interesting, or if you know of any thrillers with diverse characters. I'm really interested into looking into more of those. So do let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye!